that we can go for descriptive, then within that we can go for, say, cross-sectional as also longitudinal. So all possibilities exist depending upon who the researcher is, depending upon what is the problem, depending upon what are the objectives of the study. So you have to keep in mind this important thing, and only then I think you will be able to better appreciate that how exactly we go about providing details about our design. Because at times researchers think that if or students of say research methodology like you and me, they think that we are supposed to follow only one type of design, and one study cannot have different designs in the same document. So that is not true. So next we will see that we discussed cross-sectional designs, and in that, if you recall, I shared with you that cross-sectional designs are nothing but slice of time designs, in the sense that they give us a snapshot view of things as they existed at a particular point in time. So these designs, for example, another similarity that you can draw is that between these designs and the mobile phone cameras that we have. If you are operating your mobile phone camera in the still mode, it will give you a snapshot view of things as they existed at a particular point in time. And if you are going in for the video mode, that is, you activate the video mode in your camera, then in that case it will help you in tracking how things change with the passage of time. Then we discussed that as far as these designs are concerned, a lot of emphasis is placed on selecting the sample, and you have to see to it that the sample on which you are relying, this sample has to be representative of the target population, that is the population which is of interest to you. It is not that any sample will be suitable. So as far as possible, we have to see to it that the sample on which we are relying, it should be representative of the population at large. Because unless that is true, the problem that we will encounter later is that once we arrive at certain findings and we want to present our findings, then we cannot generalize the findings to the population at large. If, for example, the sample is not drawn using some kind of scientific sampling procedure, that is, the probability sampling plan has not been followed or adopted there. Then we discussed single cross-sectional designs and multiple cross-sectional designs. And in single cross-sectional designs, if you recall, we discussed that only one sample of respondents will be choosing from the population which is of interest, which in our case is referred to as right now as the target population. And once we obtain the information, our relationship with that sample ends there. Our relationship with the people, suppose if the sample comprises of living beings or human beings or individuals like you and me, then once I have generated data from that particular group using that sample that I have drawn, and suppose I administered a questionnaire or a research instrument. In technical terms, we refer to questionnaire as a research instrument. Suppose we administered the research instrument on that group, so my relationship with that group will end there, then and there. Whereas, let me just introduce you to longitudinal designs also here. Whereas in longitudinal designs, what happens is that sample remains fixed. Each time we will be approaching the same group of individuals. Suppose if we are discussing respondents who are living entities, so we will be approaching the same group of individuals repeatedly. So these designs, that is, these cross-sectional designs, are also referred to as sample survey designs, and in fact they are the most popular designs that are adopted by researchers, which we are using in our research. For example, most of the doctoral works that you will come across, especially in the context of countries which are located in Asia, and more particularly in our country, you will find that most of the time, that is in fact more than 95% of the time, they will be following this particular design, that is single cross-sectional design. Then we have multiple cross-sectional designs. Here what is happening is that we will be drawing 2 or more samples of respondents, and then we will be administering this questionnaire on that particular those samples that we are drawing. So these samples can be drawn at different points in time. For example, you have on your screens the cases of annual surveys which are being carried out by various organizations. For example, annual satisfaction surveys. For example, you own a particular brand of car, you may you may be receiving say a survey form from that particular manufacturer, organization, from or entity from where you have purchased that vehicle, and you may be required to provide your feedback regarding your experiences with the vehicle, regarding the after sales service and so on. And every year, This means that the research instrument, it remains the same all through. Research instrument, that is the questionnaire, remains same. If, for example, we change the research instrument, that is the questionnaire, every time we approach, then what may happen is that at times the change in response, or for example the shift in response, may not be an actual shift in response, but the shift may be simply appearing before us because there has been a change in the questionnaire itself. So we have to be careful when we are comparing responses, when in case the questionnaire itself has been changed in subsequent administrations. So multiple cross-sectional designs, the advantage is that they allow comparisons, but this comparison is not happening at the individual level, which is possible in case of longitudinal design. Here the comparison is happening at the aggregate level, but not at individual level. Another thing we have to remember is that I repeated earlier also, that in case of cross-sectional designs, the sample does not remain fixed. And in case of multiple cross-sectional designs or even single cross-sectional designs, what happens is that once we have administered the questionnaire on the samples that we have drawn, our relationship in a way with the sample ends there. Suppose you want to go in for another administration, we will be drawing a fresh sample. So you will agree that there is every possibility that the fresh sample may be having some individuals who are maybe part of the earlier sample, or there is a possibility that I may have precluded them purposely, that I see to it that they are not part of the subsequent samples. So that depends upon the objectives, that depends upon the researcher, that what kind of design the person is following. But the broad thing for us to remember is that as far as multiple cross-sectional designs are concerned, each time we will be drawing a fresh sample. And this can be done at different points in time. For example, today I'll be doing it. For example, tomorrow I can do, 1 year down the line I can do. But this is the basic distinction between longitudinal designs and cross-sectional designs. In cross-sectional designs, each time we draw a fresh sample. In longitudinal designs, the sample remains fixed. Now we'll discuss later that how exactly we are able to fix the sample. That we'll discuss later. Now, then there is an interesting variation of this multiple cross-sectional design that is referred to as cohort analysis. So, for example, all of you who are currently enrolled for various programs in our faculty, so they can be referred to as a cohort, because the commonality as far as all of you are concerned is that you were admitted during the same year, for example, in our faculty for various master's programs, and when you will be graduating, I hope, God willing, all of you will be graduating the same year. So you will be comprising one cohort. So you can be of interest to researchers as a cohort also. For example, you will be representing cohort, say the cohort that passed out or graduated, say in the year in a certain year. So you can be approached as a cohort, and whatever will be emerging from you will provide a picture of what, for example, was in the minds, or for example, what kind of attitudes or opinions, say management sprints or sprints who were from with similar backgrounds had during this particular year, during this particular difficult phase that we are going through. But if you go slightly deeper, let us try to understand this cohort analysis. So what here we notice that it comprises of series of surveys, a number of surveys, and these surveys will be conducted at different points in time, that is after appropriate time intervals, and the cohort will serve as the basic unit of analysis. So now again, related to your group, so you, for example, if you look at it from the point of view of being admitted to these various masters program in the faculty during the same year, or from the point of view of passing out or graduating in the same session, so you can serve as a cohort. So you can be contacted at different points in time, for example, by me as a researcher, and I will be requesting you, or I may request you to provide me feedback with the help of a questionnaire that I'll be administering on you. So all those who are graduating, this is an example, so that will be the commonality there. Now, for example, average income of such students who are graduating, say, or who graduated in 2019, or who will be graduating in 2021 or 2022, and suppose we are willing to, our objective is to track, or we are interested in tracking over a 10-year period following the graduation, that how exactly their average incomes are changing. So I hope you will appreciate that. This will give a very interesting insight into how the income profile change. But one thing you have to keep in mind is that you will not, I will not be approaching the same set of, exactly the same set of individuals repeatedly, because I'm discussing this under, remember, cross-sectional designs. And in cross-sectional designs, the basic characteristic is that this sample does not remain fixed. So what I'll be doing is that each time I want to administer my questionnaire on this cohort, I'll be drawing a fresh sample from this cohort. So, and then I'll administer the questionnaire, and some picture that I'll be referring to as the aggregate picture. Aggregate picture will be emerging, but I'll not be able to track how income has changed as far as each individual is concerned, because I'm not tracking on individual basis, because my sample is not fixed. So I don't know as because I don't have the right now the for example responses from individuals at same individual at different points in time. So I cannot compare at the individual level. What I can do is I can compare at the aggregate level, and aggregate level comparison, remember, is another interesting characteristic of cross-sectional designs. Okay. Now, in case of descriptive research, just remember that just like the journalists, when they're reporting any incident, they keep in mind the 6 W's. So, for example, one of the W's is who, another W is what, when, where. So these W's that have to be kept in mind. So, is the screen visible to you? Please let me just cross check. Is single screen visible to you?
Yes. Yes.
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir. It is visible.
Okay. So see, as far as these designs, who, what, when, where is concerned, remember that when we are saying that who, so it is that exactly from the point of view of our study, who is that entity? Who is that entity that I'm referring to the entity purposely? I'm using the term entity purposely because it can be, for example, an organization also that may be of interest to you. So who should be considered for the study? Then where should we be contacting? For example, if they are human beings, where should we be contacting those entities of interest, those individuals of interest? Then, for example, when should we be obtaining the information? Like now, why is this relevant? For example, at times we are interested in finding out something about consumer experience. So if the best thing would be that if we administer the questionnaire immediately after the person has experienced a service or experienced a particular product or some offering from the marketer, and not wait for time to elapse, because what may happen is that if we allow the time to elapse, and if, for example, if we administer the questionnaire, for example, 1 month after the person has experienced a certain service, in between a lot of other experiences that consumer may have had, and because of that the response may be colored or the person may be forgetting. So when exactly the information should be obtained, that also we have to keep in mind. Then what kind of information we should be collecting from the respondents or generating from the respondents, we have to be clear about that also. So because remember that we have to stick to the objectives of our study. We should not be generating data which is irrelevant, which is not required right now, and we should not be generating, researchers say, junk. So do not generate junk in the hope that we will be using it sometime later, because in the case of in business world, things are changing so fast that if we wait for even 2 months or 1 week, at times things become very different from what or how things existed, say, earlier. So the other is that why are we obtaining that information? We should be clear about this. How we will be using that information once we generate it from the respondents, we have to be clear about it. And we should also be clear of the manner in which we'll be obtaining information. For example, will we be obtaining information over telephone? We'll be administering a telephone-based survey, or for example, we'll be obtaining information using the internet. We'll be obtaining information through face-to-face interactions, that is personal interviews, and within personal interviews also there are various possibilities. For example, I can use a tablet, for example, so that we say computer assisted personal interviewing can be carried out, or it can be simple paper pencil based. So the person is giving you responses when he or she is right before you, and you keep recording the responses, or the person himself or herself gives you responses and you agree that you will be recording using some kind of device. For example, it can be an audio video device, and you record that entire interaction, that is face-to-face interaction of the personal interview. So that depends upon the privacy issues also, that depends upon the objectives of the study also, that how you proceed. But remember that the way in which you are going to obtain the information from the respondents, you have to be clear about it right at the design stage. You have to be clear about it before we proceed further, because once we have crystallized things, it becomes very difficult for us to go back and then, you know, change that that methodology. Okay. What is this? 5 minutes left in your scheduled meeting time. Okay, no problem. Then let us move to longitudinal research design. See, in longitudinal research designs, what is happening is that the sample remains fixed, or the sample, we have a fixed sample or samples. And why we are saying samples? Because you must have come across various types of ratings which are published by various organizations. For example, how popular a particular television channel is. So there has been a lot of controversies also recently, and you must have been reading the newspapers and popular media that there have been allegations that various channels and various, you know, types of other such entities, they have been manipulating their ratings. So how exactly you know, businesses or certain organizations provide ratings regarding the popularity of the various channels. So here what they do is that they maintain panels in various cities. Panels means, panels is nothing but, you can imagine that it's a kind of sample, and this panel comprises of individuals who, depending upon, you know, which particular occupational group is of interest to you. For example, their age profile, depending upon the objectives of the study or the research that you are doing. So a panel, for example, in a particular city may comprise of a doctor, of an engineer, of, for example, it can also be having housewives, it can be having, for example, university teachers, it can be having, for example, university students, it can be having employed people in general as members, unemployed as members, entrepreneurs as members. So that, you know, you have a representation of various occupational groups which otherwise comprise your target population of interest. So a panel, for example, in a particular city, depending upon the population, depending upon other, you know, characteristics which are of interest to the researcher from the point of view of the project or the work that is being done, may comprise of 20 individuals, 15 individuals. It depends. So in these designs, longitudinal designs, important thing to remember is that the panel remains fixed, and we approach these panel members repeatedly with either the same questionnaire or the research instrument or different questionnaire at different points in time. So longitudinal studies may last for years together. For example, some of these studies, you may find the researchers continued interacting, getting feedback from subjects of interest for 20 years, for 30 years. Though, of course, in the kind of studies that we do, it is not possible, because there the objective is different, and there, for example, things that are being researched are very different from the studies that we do, for example, from the point of view of doctoral work or from the point of view of writing a research paper or a term paper. So in our case, generally, even if we are following a longitudinal design, the time horizon will not be more than 2 or 3 or 4 years, because generally we are supposed to wind up our doctoral works within this time. So that is why it will not extend to you know, indefinitely, or it may not extend to, say, 10 years or 15 years time frame. So in contrast, as is given here, you may note that in contrast here, what's happening is that a typical cross-sectional design, it will give us a snapshot view or an idea regarding what was happening at one point in time. Whereas in this case, it will give us a series of pictures. With the help of data that we are generating using or following this longitudinal design, we can find out that how things were changing with the passage of time, because we get a series of pictures. Then see, longitudinal designs, they are of great help to us in detecting change. So that this term panel, as I introduced you to this term panel earlier, is used interchangeably with the term longitudinal design. So sometimes when you say, I have followed panel design, the person will understand that you have gone in for longitudinal design. So in certain textbooks, in fact, you will find that longitudinal design is not used, and they are using panel design instead of longitudinal design. So do not get confused if you come across this terminology. So a panel consists of a sample of respondents, And remember that this sample has agreed to be part of your survey, or agreed to be part of those individuals who comprise the sample, or those respondents. They have agreed to be part of your sample, and they have agreed that they can be approached at different points in time. So it is not that you will be calling them to one particular location and then administering questionnaire. They are administered questionnaires in, or response forms or research instruments in natural settings. For example, if a housewife is a member of this panel, so you will administer the questionnaire. It can be, for example, administered through, nowadays, through a smartphone. It can be administered through email, or for example, you can send a questionnaire, hard copy version of the questionnaire, through snail mail or speed post. So it will be administered at the location of the respondent. You generally do not call the respondents to one location and get their feedback. Generally, the example that I shared with you earlier, that organizations are maintaining panels, for example, in the context of getting feedback regarding how popular a particular channel is. So these organizations are generally referred to as syndicated firms. So they are maintaining these panels, and these panel members are at times compensated for agreeing to be part of your panel. Now there is a controversy regarding this. When people are being compensated, some researchers say that these individuals are there, they have agreed to be part of the panel not because of love for research, but because these people wanted something in return from you or from the syndicated firm, and that is why they agreed to be part of the panel. Now there is a problem when we say that people are being compensated and people are getting something in return, because see, this compensation generally is not supposed to be, I'm repeating, is generally not supposed to be in the form of monetary compensation. That is, you should not be giving money. So the compensation can be in the form of, say, gift coupons of organizations which are not part of the survey or part of the instrument which you are administering on the questionnaire. Like, for example, if you want to get feedback from your panel regarding how, for example, a particular brand. So questions, they are pertaining to a particular brand, particular organization. So you should not be providing gift coupons from the same organization, because otherwise what would happen is that it may be considered very unethical act on your part as a research organization. And also you will agree that the responses may get biased simply because the person feels obliged. The respondent feels obliged that, see, I have been given a gift coupon by this very organization, so I should be giving a feedback which is a correct feedback. And remember, in research, we don't want a correct feedback. We want a feedback which is genuine feedback. Whatever it exists in reality, in the mind of the respondent, that is what we are basically interested in extracting. So since the same units are measured repeatedly, remember that variations may be caused in samples and they may be eliminated, and even small variations, they may become apparent. So that is why we say that these kind of designs are helpful in detecting change. We will come back to it slightly later. So another advantage of longitudinal designs is that because people have agreed to be part of your panel and they are being compensated in some manner, so you can take liberties in the sense that lengthy questionnaires can be administered on the sample or the members of the sample. So that is why we say large amounts of data can be collected. When we say large amount of data, of course, large amount of data can be collected only from individuals using questionnaires which are having a number of questions or which are lengthy. So lengthy questionnaires can help us in generating large amounts of data. So data which has been generated using this particular design, that is longitudinal design, so it is considered to be more accurate. Why it is considered to be more accurate? Because there is less of reliance on memory. Now let me share why we are saying less of reliance on memory. Remember, I shared with you that the best thing, for example, in the context of consumer satisfaction survey would be that you administer the questionnaire immediately after the person has experienced a certain service, or for example has come across a particular product and used a particular product. So immediately after that, the questionnaire should be administered. So once and this is possible only in case of longitudinal design. Why? Because here the panel or the sample is fixed, and you already have you have access to this particular sample, so you can provide them your questionnaire even beforehand, and you can advise them to fill up the questionnaire immediately after, for example, they have experienced after sales service from a particular organization. So once, for example, you own a particular brand of car A, and you say that after you have got your vehicle serviced, So you provide us feedback regarding your after sales service experience. So this questionnaire is already available with that with your sample or with your panel. So less of reliance will be on memory, because the person does not have to stress his memory, does not have to keep recall things, because the person has immediately, for example, today itself experienced that service, and in the evening the person gives you feedback using with the help of the questionnaire that is already available with that individual, and this individual is part of your panel. So say, for example, take the case of this example here, that study published in 2017. So in fact, it was reported that in the context of Asia, during the 25-year period, only around 7% of the studies in the HR domain, they followed this longitudinal design. So I think it supports what I was sharing with you, that 95% of the time you will find that studies, they are following the cross-sectional design and not the longitudinal design. And why? Because these longitudinal designs, you will agree that they are time consuming, and as researchers or as doctoral students, or for example as PG students, the idea is to wind up the time within a given time frame. So that is why it is generally not feasible for us to go for longitudinal designs, because they will be requiring, for example, at least 2 to 3 years for us to complete that work, or maybe even more, as I shared with you, that some of these studies have extended for 20 years and 30 years. So that is a possibility. So most of the time you will find that we follow cross-sectional design. But of course, we should be aware of the advantages and disadvantages of each of these designs, so that we can better appreciate when we are going through the works of other researchers, as also when we are deciding that what design we should be adopting for our own study or for tackling the problem that the organization which has commissioned this study is concerned. So remember that I'm discussing whatever designs I'm discussing from the point of view of that, suppose you are a consultant, suppose you are carrying out a study, and this is a live problem. For example, some organization, a particular organization is facing some kind of problem, and the person has contacted you. You are a researcher, and you are asked to carry out a study so that they can know more about the problem and it can be addressed appropriately. Now, what are the disadvantages? It is not that longitudinal designs have only advantages, they have disadvantages also. So one of the disadvantages that people who have agreed to be part of the panel, at times they may disagree to give you feedbacks. They may refuse to cooperate. Why? Because, as I told you, that they have agreed to be part of the and that is what is expected when you are drawing a panel. They have agreed to be part of your study because of the love for research, maybe, and the person maybe is not very much interested in the gift coupons or any kind of monetary incentive. So the person may not be always willing to give you feedback, or may always be willing to cooperate with you. That is one possibility. Another possibility is that of mortality. Now, when does this occur? For example, if somebody was part of your panel, and he or she was part of the panel because he or she was a doctor, and he or she was residing in Delhi. So that is why the person was part of the panel. So suppose the person shifts residence from Delhi to Mumbai. So when the person has shifted residence, of course the occupation has remained the same. But you will say that, okay, what's the problem? Now this person will become part of my panel in Mumbai. Or for example, you may say that, okay, I'll pick any other doctor, and this doctor will be a substitute, and the response will be emerging from this new doctor who is freshly added to my panel will be the same as the earlier respondent. No, that is not always true, because no two individuals are exactly alike. So do remember that in the context of research, when we are saying mortality, it doesn't mean, God forbid, the death of that member who is part of your panel, but it refers to that the panel member has maybe shifted, or maybe has left your panel for various reasons. Another reason why we may encounter problems is the payment issue, as I told you earlier. So payment may lead to people who are, or may attract people who are otherwise not interested in giving feedback per se from the point of view of a study, but because they want some money only, that is why they are there. So that we have to be cautious as researchers when we are getting feedback from such individuals. The best thing would be to avoid having such people as part of your panel. then panels may suffer from response bias. Now, what is this response bias? It can be of different types. For example, people who have been freshly added to your panel, they may start giving responses which are inflated responses. Why are they giving inflated responses? Because they think that unless they give these inflated responses, the researcher or the research organization will not continue or will not allow them to continue to be part of the panel for very long. So they give inflated responses so as to please the research organization. See, that is not what we want. So the best thing would be that we can remove the responses of freshly recruited panel members for some time. Let us allow them to cool down. Once they cool down, then we start considering the responses for the purpose of analysis. Another problem we encounter is from the point of view of panel members who have been existing there for very long. That is, who have continued to be part of your panel for several years. So what happens is that these people start believing that they are part of the panel because they are experts, and the organization is continuing with them because they are somebody special. So they start giving responses which are expert responses. See, we as researchers are not interested in particular kind of response. We are interested in genuine responses. So if people are giving us responses which are inflated and these are coming from freshly recruited panel members, that will be a problem for us. If people are giving us responses because they think that they are experts and that is why they have been allowed to continue for very long, that will also lead to bias in your analysis or in your data, and that is why we have to be careful with such individuals also. So at times bias may also creep in because of boredom and fatigue. So what is happening is that the person, because your questionnaire is very uninteresting, the questionnaire is very long. So what is happening is that the person gives you some response, but that response is not a genuine response. The person has given you we say a response which is an unengaged response, which is not an engaged response, which is not a quality response. So again, we have to be careful and we have to see to it that we do not, our questionnaires and instruments do not result in boredom, do not fatigue the respondents. So you have to keep them short and sweet. We say that you have to always keep your questionnaires short and sweet, and the study should not be such that we should be causing any kind of stress as far as the respondents are concerned. In fact, at some point I'll be discussing later that it is one of the guidelines as far as various countries are concerned, when that is guidelines pertaining to design of the instrument itself, that is the questionnaire itself, that we should not be designing questionnaires which are lengthy, we should not be designing questionnaires which have questions which are sensitive or critical from the point of view of that particular culture. So that I'll discuss later. Within this longitudinal designs, you must have seen in that slide that there are two possibilities. We can go for two panel designs or we can go for omnibus panel designs. The basic difference between these two types of designs is that in the two panel design, we approach the panel members with the same subject of interest. That is, each time we approach, you can imagine that I have the same, suppose I have the same questionnaire with me and I'm approaching the panel members repeatedly at, say for example, after a passage of 1 year, I'll be contacting them again, but I'll be having the same research instrument. No question in that instrument will be changed. Or in general, like let me say that my subject of interest or whatever I'm researching, it remains the same each time I approach my panel members repeatedly after maybe a passage of 6 months or maybe passage of 1 year, whatever you have decided upon, that should be the time frame when you will be contacting them. As far as omnibus panels are concerned, remember here what happens is that the information, or say, let us continue with the example of questionnaire or the research instrument. The research instrument with which I'll be approaching them, or which I'll be having when I approach, or which I'll be administering on them, that research instrument will be pertaining to, say, different subjects of interest, or it will be interested in getting feedback regarding different things at different points in time. But remember, this is what distinguishes longitudinal designs from multiple cross-sectional designs. In multiple cross-sectional designs, the sample was drawn afresh each time, whereas in case of longitudinal designs, the sample remains fixed. Remember, that is one of the basic differences between longitudinal and cross-sectional designs, and you should not be confused at any point in time. In case of two panel designs, remember true here we are referring to that we will be approaching them with this and inquiring regarding the same thing, with the same questionnaire. And an omnibus panel, here what will be happening is that the sample of panels that is selected and maintained, but the information collected from them will vary every time. Now, this is a summary of all that we have covered up to now as far as these two types of designs are concerned, that is cross-sectional designs and longitudinal designs. And in this, let us revise very quickly. See, if you recall, we discussed that longitudinal designs are advantageous as far as detecting change is concerned. Why is this possible? Because in longitudinal designs, the sample remains fixed. And once it is fixed, what we can do is that we can track down even at the individual level. Whereas in case of cross-sectional designs, only aggregate level comparisons are possible. So in longitudinal designs, comparisons at individual levels are possible. That is, I can compare what was the response that emerged 1 year back from the same individual and what is the response that the person is giving today to me in terms of the questionnaire. Of course, I'm assuming that the questionnaire remains the same, because otherwise I cannot compare the responses. Then we have large amount of data can be collected. Again, you recall we discussed that in case of longitudinal designs, because the panel members have agreed to be part of my panel in return for some kind of compensation, or for example, they're getting gift coupons, so I can take some liberties. But in case of cross-sectional design, what is happening is that I can't take such liberties, so I have to approach that the members of my panel of my sample with a questionnaire which is short and sweet. I should not be taking too much of liberties as far as cross-sectional design is concerned. Now, when we say more that longitudinal designs are more accurate, remember I shared with you that in case of longitudinal designs, the possibility is that you may provide the questionnaire or the response form beforehand, and you can advise your respondents, your panel members, in case of longitudinal designs, to provide you feedback immediately after they have experienced a service or they have experienced a product, so that less of reliance is there on memory. So that is why we say, whereas in case of cross-sectional designs, suppose I am administering a questionnaire today on you, and suppose I am trying to probe something related to your vehicle purchase. So maybe some of you may have purchased it 5 years back, some of you may have purchased it 1 year back, some of you may have purchased, for example, say 2 months back, or for example, I'm trying to research something about smartphones. So some of you may have purchased 1 year back, some of you say 6 months back, some of you a week back. So maybe at times more of reliance may be there on memory. So in case of cross-sectional design, because I could not have administered the questionnaire beforehand on you. Why? Because as far as you are concerned, in case of cross-sectional design, here you were not fixed. You were not. I had no access to you earlier. I will be drawing my samples, my sample afresh each time I administrate on you, whether I'm going in for single cross-sectional design or multiple cross-sectional design. Whereas in case of longitudinal design, I can provide the questionnaire beforehand, and that is why less of reliance is on memory, and that is why we say that the data which is emerging is more accurate. As far as representativeness of the sampling is concerned, it is said that cross-sectional designs are always advantageous. Why? Because cross-sectional designs, suppose I'm interested in getting feedback from management students, so best way would be to approach you people, for example, and not approach a panel in which maybe only one of the members of the panel may be a management student. So that is why it is said that cross-sectional designs are more representative. Or for example, I am interested in getting feedback and I am going in for a mall intercept survey. Let me repeat, mall intercept survey. Or I'm interested in studying a particular departmental store. So people coming out of a departmental store, they are of interest to me. So the best thing for me would be to stand there or to approach these people as they are coming out, and not rely on a panel, because maybe some of the panel members may have never gone to that store, or they may have visited that. They may not have visited that store for a long time. So that is why these cross-sectional designs are more advantageous, and this is the design that should be adopted if you want to go in for more representativeness of the sample, if you want to draw a more representative sample. As far as the response bias is concerned, we saw that different types of biases creep in as far as longitudinal designs are concerned. So that is why if you want to minimize those biases, for example, bias vis-a-vis individuals who have continued for very long in your panel and they're giving you expert responses, people who have been recruited freshly into your panel and they're giving you responses, inflated responses because they want to keep the organization happy. So all these biases may creep in case of longitudinal design, and that is why it is said that response bias is minimal in case of cross-sectional design, and this is more advantageous. Now I'll take some questions very quickly. If you have some questions, you are welcome to ask. Yes. If there are no questions, let me just close with this. See, we did not cover the causal research designs. So let us look at this. What are these causal designs? See, the descriptive designs, remember, they enable us to explore the association between the variables, but they are not suitable for exploring the causal relationship between the variables. I'm repeating. Descriptive designs that we were considering, they are suitable for exploring or for finding out or determining the degree of association between the variables of interest. But if you are interested in determining the causal relationship, in that case, we have to go for causal research design. So here in case of causal design, what is happening is that we generally manipulate the independent variables, and this manipulation is done in a manner so that we are able to control for other extraneous variables, and the effect of this manipulation is studied in terms of the dependent variable. Let me give you a simple example. Suppose I want to find out that whether more of sales would be happening if I decrease the price of my offering, if I improve the packaging of my offering. So if suppose I'm able to control for all other extraneous variables, all other influencers, all other contaminating variables, and if I suppose on a select group I experiment by reducing the price of my offering, and then I also change the package design, and then I ask those people that or I try to find out that what is the response to this decrease in price and an improvement in packaging, and they give me some feedback. So I can do it in several ways. For example, on one group, I try that I change only the price, and at different price points, I get the feedback. In one case, what I do is I change only the packaging and I get their feedback. And in one case, I manipulate both of them and I get their feedback. And what will be the response? How will I be measuring that? What is the effect of this manipulation in terms of the dependent variable? What is the dependent variable? The sales. If the sales, for example, improve, then I'll say that, okay, there is a positive effect of this manipulation. If the sales remain stagnant, I will say that there has been no change of this manipulation. By manipulation, I'm not using in the negative sense. I'm using the term manipulation in the positive sense. That is, I change the price. Now, changing of price is a manipulation as far as price is concerned. This variable price is concerned. If, for example, if I change the package design, so that is again a manipulation in the context of the design of the package. So in case of causal research designs, remember what is happening is that basically the effect of manipulation on one or more dependent variables is measured to infer causality, that what is the nature of relationship that exists between them. So it is not always necessary that change in price may lead to improvement in sales or increase in sales, or change in package design may lead to increase in sales. But remember that the aim of this causal research is to find out that whether a genuine link exists between the two variables. Whether, for example, the decrease in price is leading to some kind of change as far as sales are concerned. This simple crude example we are considering here. So the main method as far as causal designs or causal research is concerned is experimentation. You will agree that what we are doing basically in the example that I shared with you, that you are experimenting. You are changing the price, manipulating the price, you are changing the package design, and then each time you are trying to study the effect of this change or this manipulation in terms of the dependent variable, and that dependent variable is nothing but, say, the sales figures that you have been tracking or that you are monitoring, that whether the sales figures are improving or they are not improving because of the experimentation or the manipulation in the variables that you have done. Now with this, we will be ending today's interaction. Thank you very much. Again, I'll say that if you have any questions, you are welcome to share with me. You can even post on the WhatsApp group, so that if other people also had similar questions in mind, so there will be no repetitions, and I can address your queries in the next interaction.